What if the most dangerous moment of your entire day isn't when you're driving on the freeway, lifting something heavy in the yard, or eating that meal you know you probably shouldn't? What if the most dangerous moment of your day is the hour right before you fall asleep, and you've been walking through it completely unaware every single night for years? I want you to sit with that for a second. Because most of the patients who come to see me are doing everything they think is right. They're watching their diet, they're taking their medications. Some of them are even exercising. And yet, when I run their numbers, when I look at their imaging, when I ask the right questions, I find damage. Quiet damage, the kind that doesn't announce itself with chest pain or dizziness or a dramatic event. The kind that has been accumulating silently, and the pattern I keep seeing over and over in my clinic has everything to do with what my patients are doing between dinner and the moment they close their eyes. That window, that specific, unmonitored, underestimated window. Here's something that most people don't know. After the age of 60, sleep is not a neutral state for your body. It is a high-stakes physiological event. Your blood pressure is supposed to follow a precise rhythm during the night. Your blood thickens and thins in response to hydration and position. Your nervous system is making a delicate transition that, if disrupted, has consequences that don't show up for months, sometimes years, and when they do, they show up as a stroke no one saw coming. And I'm not talking about the dramatic kind. I'm talking about silent strokes, what we call silent cerebral infarcts. Tiny events in the brain that leave no paralysis, no slurred speech, no moment of collapse. Just quiet, invisible destruction. An estimated 10 to 15 million Americans have had one and don't know it. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through 7 things that are happening in bedrooms across this country every night in people who genuinely believe they're taking care of themselves. 7 habits, 7 risks, each one more serious than the last. And the 7th, the one connected directly to those silent strokes, is the one I want you to remember most. Let's start. Number 1, eating a heavy, sodium-rich meal within 2 hours of sleep. Almost every patient of mine who does this says the same thing. It's just dinner, Dr. Hayes. I don't eat that much. And I believe them. The problem isn't the amount. The problem is the timing and what's in the food, specifically the sodium, and what that does to your blood pressure. It's when your heart rests. It's when your arterial walls recover. It's one of the most important things your body does every single night. During the early hours of sleep, your blood pressure is supposed to drop, typically 10 to 20% below your daytime levels. That drop isn't incidental. During the early hours of sleep, your blood pressure is supposed to drop, typically 10 to 20% below your daytime levels. That drop isn't incidental, and most people have never heard of it. Now, sodium changes all of that. A high-salt meal triggers fluid retention. Your blood volume expands, and instead of dropping as you sleep, your blood pressure stays elevated, or in some cases, rises. Think of it like a garden hose. You're supposed to reduce the water pressure overnight to give the hose material time to rest and recover. But if you leave the pressure on or increase it, the hose wears down faster, the walls weaken, and eventually something gives. A 2019 analysis published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, which followed over 3,000 adults with hypertension, found that non-dipping nocturnal blood pressure, the failure of BP to drop at night, of cardiovascular events compared to those with normal dipping patterns. 35%, not from a dramatic meal, from a routine one, eaten too late. If you ignore this, the consequence isn't immediate, it's cumulative. Night after night of elevated nocturnal pressure means your heart, the deficit compounds. And by the time symptoms appear, years of damage have already been done. What can you do starting tonight? Finish your last substantial meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bed. If you're hungry in the evening, choose something low in sodium. A small portion of plain yogurt, a handful of unsalted nuts, a banana. Nothing with a label full of ingredients you can't pronounce. Give your cardiovascular system the pressure drop it's designed to take. But there's something even more dangerous than what you eat before bed. And millions of people are doing it without realizing the specific timing problem it creates. Number 2, skipping or mistiming your blood pressure medication. I hear this constantly in my office. I'm said with a shrug, said as though timing were a detail. It is not a detail. It is, in some cases, the difference between protection and exposure. Here's the truth most patients aren't told. The time of day you take an antihypertensive medication determines which hours of the day your cardiovascular system is actually protected. Many common blood pressure medications reach peak effectiveness 4 to 6 hours after ingestion. If you take them in the morning and they wear off by evening, your body is entering its most vulnerable nocturnal hours without adequate coverage. You've been medicated all day when your activity and stress levels were high, and unmedicated at night when the damage from non-dipping BP is most severe. Think of it like a security system in your house. If you turn it on every morning, but it automatically shuts off at 9 at night, your home is unprotected during the exact hours when no one is watching. That's what mistimed medication does to your cardiovascular system. A landmark study published in the European Heart Journal in 2019 followed over 19,000 patients over 6 years and found that those who took their blood pressure medication at bedtime had a 45% lower risk of cardiovascular death, heart attack, and stroke compared to those who took it in the morning. The same drug, the same dose, a different time. If you don't ask your doctor about this, you may never hear it. The standard advice is still, take it in the morning. I encourage every patient of mine to have that specific conversation, not to change their medication, but to ask whether the timing is optimized for nocturnal protection. The concrete step: write down what time you currently take your blood pressure medication and bring that information to your next appointment. Ask specifically, should I be taking this at night instead of the morning to protect my cardiovascular system while I sleep? That one question could change everything. Before I go further, I want to pause for a moment because I think this is important. Many of my patients who hear about nocturnal cardiovascular risk ask me what they can do beyond the individual habit changes I'm describing right now. They want something structured, something that accounts for the full 2-hour window before sleep, not just one habit, but all of it working together. I've been pointing them toward a resource that covers exactly this, what the ideal pre-sleep window looks like for heart protection, including bedroom temperature, what to eat and avoid, sleeping position, and a complete step-by-step bedtime ritual. If that sounds like something that would help you, and I think it will, the link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and you can also scan the QR code that's on your screen right now. Take a look when you're ready. Now let's keep going. Because what comes next is something I almost never hear talked about in these conversations, and it should be. Number 3, drinking alcohol to help you sleep. I understand why people do this. After a long day, a glass of wine feels like relief. It feels like it's working. You fall asleep faster. I understand why people do this. After a long day, a glass of wine feels like relief. It feels like it's working. You fall asleep faster. Is the opposite of what you believe. Yes, it helps you fall asleep faster. That part is real. But alcohol disrupts the architecture of your sleep in ways you cannot feel from the inside. It suppresses REM sleep. It fragments the deeper stages of rest. And critically, it prevents the natural blood pressure drop that your cardiovascular system depends on overnight. There's more. Alcohol elevates your nighttime heart rate. It acts as a diuretic, quietly dehydrating you as you sleep. And in people over 60, particularly those with any history of heart irregularity, alcohol increases the risk of nocturnal atrial fibrillation. When it occurs during sleep, is especially dangerous because there are no symptoms to alert you to it. Think of your sleeping cardiovascular system. It's like a furnace running through the night. Alcohol throws a wrench into the timing mechanism. The furnace doesn't shut down, it runs erratically. It's burning hotter in some cycles, stalling in others, never completing the maintenance sequence it was built to perform. A study from the University of Melbourne, published in JAMA Netweek Open in 2020, analyzed over 4,000 adults and found that even moderate alcohol consumption, as little as 1 to 2 drinks, reduced sleep quality scores by nearly 24% and was associated with measurable increases in overnight heart rate and blood pressure compared to alcohol-free nights. If you rely on alcohol to sleep, your body is not resting. It is managing a chemical disruption. The heart is not recovering. The brain is not consolidating. And those deficits show up in your memory, your energy, your arterial health, long before any dramatic symptom does. Tonight, replace the wine with something that actually supports cardiovascular calm: a cup of warm chamomile or passion flower tea, a small glass of tart cherry juice, which contains natural melatonin precursors, or simply warm water with a small amount of magnesium glycinate powder. And now we move into territory that most people genuinely haven't considered, because the next item on this list has nothing to do with what you eat or drink. It has to do with how your body is positioned for the next 7 hours. Number 4, sleeping in a position that compresses circulation. Most people choose their sleeping position the way they choose a pillow, by comfort and habit and nothing else. I'm not going to tell you that one position is right for everyone, but I am going to tell you that after 60, certain positions that felt completely fine in your 40s are now working against a body whose arterial walls are stiffer, whose venous return is slower, and whose brain is more sensitive to fluctuations in blood flow. Here's what I see. Most often in my patients, those who sleep on their stomachs or on their right side with their neck torqued and their chest compressed. What that does, particularly in people with any degree of arterial stiffness or sleep apnea, is restrict the venous drainage from the brain, mildly elevate intracranial pressure, and compress the blood vessels in ways that don't cause pain but do create cumulative vascular stress. Imagine a garden hose left kinked overnight. Not completely blocked, just partially. The water still flows, but the pressure builds behind the kink, and over time, the hose material at that point weakens faster than everywhere else. That's what poor sleeping position does to already compromised vessels, night after night, year after year. That sleeping position influences intracranial venous drainage, and that lateral sleeping, particularly on the left side, which operates primarily during sleep and is critical for removing the protein fragments associated with neurological decline. Untreated apnea combined with a compressive position means your brain is experiencing repeated oxygen dips in an already constrained circulatory environment. Starting tonight, if you are not a left side sleeper, experiment with it. Use a pillow between your knees for comfort. Keep your neck in a neutral position, not cranked up, not pressed down. And if you snore or have ever been told you stop breathing during sleep, please talk to your doctor about a sleep study. Undiagnosed apnea is one of the most underappreciated cardiovascular risks I encounter in patients over 60. But here's what I need you to understand. Even if you fix your position, even if you stop drinking alcohol before bed, if you're making the mistake I'm about to describe, you're still sending your sleeping body into dangerous territory every single night. And this one surprises almost everyone. Number 5, going to bed dehydrated. Let me ask you something. How much water did you drink today? Not coffee, not juice, not sparkling water at dinner, just plain water. If you're like most of my patients over 60, the honest answer is not enough. And you may not have felt thirsty. That's actually part of the problem. As we age, the thirst mechanism becomes less reliable. Your brain stops sending the signal with the same urgency it did when you were younger. So your body can be significantly underhydrated and you genuinely don't feel it. You go to bed without noticing. And then something happens inside your bloodstream while you sleep that most people have never been told about. Your blood becomes more viscous, thicker. As you sleep, you lose fluid through breathing and mild perspiration. You're not replenishing it, and the blood cells begin moving more slowly through your vessels. In a healthy body with flexible, clean arteries, this isn't catastrophic. But in a body over 60, with any degree of arterial narrowing or pre-existing plaque, thicker blood moving through narrower passages, it's like trying to push honey through a drinking straw. The resistance increases, and if there's a rough patch on the wall of that straw, a vulnerable spot in an arterial wall, that's where something catches. A study from Loma Linda University, published in the American Journal of Epidemiology and following over 20,000 adults, found that drinking 5 or more glasses of water per day was associated with a 54% lower risk of fatal coronary heart disease in men, and a 41% lower risk in women, compared to those who drank 2 or fewer glasses. Hydration is not a wellness trend, it is a cardiovascular intervention. What can you do starting tonight? Drink 1 full glass of water, 8 to 10 ounces, 30 minutes before bed. Not right before you lie down, where it disrupts sleep with bathroom trips, but 30 minutes prior. And tomorrow, begin tracking your water intake during the day with a simple goal. 6 to 8 glasses before 6 in the evening. That's it, no app required. We're now entering the territory where the risks become less intuitive and more alarming. Because the next item on this list is something that is sitting in the medicine cabinet of millions of people right now. Something considered safe, sold without a prescription, and used routinely before bed for completely understandable reasons. Number 6, taking NSAIDs or common over-the-counter painkillers before bed. I want to be careful here because I'm not trying to alarm anyone unnecessarily. I'm talking about ibuprofen, naproxen, the medications you take for a bad knee, a tension headache, the general ache that settles into your joints by evening. I have patients who take these every single night. They don't think of it as medication. They think of it as relief. What they don't know, what I have to tell them directly, sitting across from them in the exam room, is that NSAIDs cause measurable nocturnal blood pressure elevation. They do this by inhibiting the prostaglandins that help regulate blood vessel tone and kidney function. When those regulatory signals are suppressed, your kidneys retain more sodium, your blood vessels constrict more readily, and your blood pressure, which is supposed to be dropping during sleep, instead holds elevated or climbs. Think of prostaglandins as the pressure release valves on a boiler. While the boiler is still running, the pressure inside builds unchecked. At night, when you can't feel it, when nothing is monitoring it. A meta-analysis published in The Lancet in 2016, pooling data from more than 353,000 patients across 280 clinical trials, was associated with a threefold increase in the risk of hospitalization for heart failure and a measurable increase in cardiovascular events. If you are using NSAIDs regularly for chronic pain, I want you to have a direct conversation with your doctor about alternatives, physical therapy protocols, topical anti-inflammatory gels, acetaminophen at appropriate doses, or magnesium supplementation for tension-related pain. Now we arrive at the seventh item, the one I've been building toward, the one that most directly connects every habit I've described to the most invisible, most underestimated neurological threat facing people over 60. Number 7, going to bed with uncontrolled or undetected nocturnal hypertension. Let me be direct with you about something that I think about every single time a patient walks out of my office without this information. Silent strokes are real. They are happening right now, tonight, in the brains of people who feel completely fine, people who had a normal clinic visit last month, who got a blood pressure reading that looked acceptable at 2 in the afternoon, and who went home believing their cardiovascular health was under control. Here's what they don't know. The blood pressure reading you get in a doctor's office during the day is a single snapshot. It tells you almost nothing about what your blood pressure is doing at 2 in the morning. And after 60, what matters most, what drives the mechanism behind silent cerebral infarcts, is a pattern called non-dipping or reverse-dipping nocturnal hypertension. In a healthy cardiovascular system, blood pressure drops 10 to 20% during sleep. That drop protects the small vessels in your brain, the tiny, fragile capillaries and arterioles that don't have the same muscular walls as the larger vessels. In non-dipping hypertension, that drop doesn't happen. In reverse dipping, which is even more dangerous, blood pressure actually rises during sleep. And night after night, the sustained pressure against those small vessels causes microscopic ruptures and microinfarcts. Events so small, they just progressive damage to the brain tissue that controls memory, balance, processing speed, and the integrity of the arterial network itself. Published in Stroke in 2018, followed over 1,200 adults with hypertension and found that those with reverse-dipping nocturnal blood pressure patterns of silent cerebral lesions on MRI imaging compared to normal dippers, and these lesions were directly correlated with cognitive decline over the following 5 years. I had a patient, Barbara, 64 years old, a retired school teacher who came in for a routine physical. Her daytime blood pressure was fine. She felt great, but she mentioned she'd been having occasional word-finding difficulties and felt slightly off balance some mornings. The monitor showed reverse dipping. Her blood pressure was actually higher at 3 in the morning than at 3 in the afternoon. The MRI showed multiple small white matter lesions. Silent strokes, years of them. She had no idea. The only way to know if this is happening to you is a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. It is a device you wear for a full day and night. It records your blood pressure every 20 to 30 minutes during sleep. Most patients have never been offered one. It is not standard. It should be. What I want you to do is this. At your next medical appointment, ask your doctor for a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure study. Say exactly those words. Explain that you want to know your nocturnal blood pressure pattern. If your doctor is not familiar with non-dipping hypertension, bring this information with you. You are entitled to this data about your own body. And if there is a problem, catching it now while the damage is still limited, while the medication and the lifestyle adjustments can still make a real difference, is the most important thing you can do for your brain. Don't wait for a symptom. Symptoms come after the damage. This is how you get ahead of it.
Let me bring this together. 7 habits. 1 through 3. The late meal loaded with sodium, the mistimed blood pressure medication, the alcohol you drink for sleep.
Each one disrupts the nocturnal dipping pattern your heart depends on. Items 4 and 5, the wrong sleeping position, the dehydration you don't feel, create the circulatory conditions under which damage silently accumulates. Item 6, the NSAID you take without thinking twice. And item 7, the nocturnal hypertension no one ever tested for, is the mechanism through which silent strokes happen in people who think they are fine. Here's what I want you to understand. You just received information that most adults over 60, even those under regular medical care, don't have. And I'm not saying that to impress you. I'm saying it because information without action is just noise. What you do tonight and the question you ask at your next appointment matters more than anything I've said in this video. You are not powerless here. That's the thing I most want you to leave with. These are not inevitable processes, they are interruptible, and the interruption starts with awareness, which you now have. Before I close, I want to revisit something I mentioned earlier in this video. For those of you who want to take this further, who want a structured approach to the full 2 hours before bed, including the right temperature for cardiovascular sleep, the correct foods and position, and a step-by-step ritual designed around protecting your heart during the night. The resource I've been recommending to my patients is available right now. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below. The QR code is on your screen. This is the kind of thing I wish I could hand every patient on their way out of my office. A clear, specific protocol for the hours that matter most. If that's useful to you, it's there. Now, if this video helped you, I want to ask you one thing. Don't keep it to yourself. Think of one person in your life, a parent, a sibling, a spouse, a neighbor, who goes to bed each night without knowing what you just learned. Share this video with them. You might be giving them the question that changes their next doctor's visit. You might be giving them something more than that. In the next video, I'm going to cover something that catches even my most health-conscious patients off guard. The 5 morning habits that determine whether your cardiovascular system spends the next 16 hours in a state of protection or quiet, accumulating stress. It's the only one you have, and it's still worth fighting for.